Tell me one word about how you are feeling about the college application process.
One word, anxious.
Overwhelmed, maybe.
Tedious.
Stressed.
Excited.
Stressed.
Do you feel that the Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action will affect your college process?
Like, my college process hasn't really changed all that much, but it has given me like a lot to think about like in the future, because like how is it going to affect other people coming after me?
It'll affect everyone's process. I think for me, it has like changed the way that I'm approaching applying to college.
I think it will because I'm a person of color and going to meetings like with SCHEME and Latinos Unidos, we talked a lot about like how this will affect us and who it doesn't affect, and it's a little bit overwhelming because this has never happened until this year, and it's, I really have to be thoughtful about my choices.
I do think it will because I identify as an African American, and I think that will have some impact on on my application, but not that much that I'm like actively worried about my applications.
I mean, to a degree, I'm mixed. So on my application, it says black and white.
Has your perspective on writing your college essays changed since the ruling?
I think I'm trying to talk more about like my race and my ethnicity in my essays more than I would have normally, because that's not something they're going to be evaluating. But I think it's something that I'm emphasizing, but it's also something that I would have talked about no matter what.
I was going to write about my identity regardless, but I think it's a really big part about like who I am and like me as a candidate.
Yeah, I think more militant about asserting my identity because of it, because I think the ruling was so ludicrously unfair.
Do you feel pressured to write about your identity in your college essays?
Before, I wasn't counting on it. It was never really something on my mind, but now it's like, oh, will I get into college will I not get into college if they don't know I'm black, So how do I let them know without like having to check a box or just like saying like, oh, I'm black, like in a essay? Because if I'm being honest, like being black is just something that's part of my life. It's not something I really have to think about.
I wouldn't say I necessarily feel pressured. I think I definitely like feel encouraged to do so because I want like colleges and wherever I'm going to know like the parts about me and the parts of my identity that is like what shaped me.
There's no you have no other choice but to write about your experiences if you want to like be seen as more than just like a person on a piece of paper,
I feel like because there aren't enough spaces where I could really talk about myself, I feel like the supplements are a good place for me to write about certain experiences that I've had. A little bit of pressure to write about them, but nothing that I'm like severely worried about.
I would have written about my personal identity anyway. I would have written about my political beliefs anyway. Certainly, I think that a lot of the supplementals that I've read now have spaces where you can actually talk specifically about the Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action.
We followed up with Brooks to hear more about the student organization at Masters that he leads called SCHEME. SCHEME stands for the Students of Color Empowering Excellence Through Mentorship, and it provides information, education, and a space for discussion for POC students.
Yeah, it's just about providing information. That's what we do. We've definitely, like I said, first with that information aspect, we host 2 sessions like a couple weeks ago about affirmative action, just letting people know, and also just like providing a space where people can be honest about their feelings about the situation, because there is a lot of feelings about their situation.
The SCHEME program has been, really enormously helpful for many of the students who've been able to connect with, master's alums of color as well, for help that they maybe wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
We also asked Brooks if students should think differently about which schools to apply to.
I know a lot of people, they're like moving toward applying to HBCUs more because they know like, oh, they will have a space for me. But at the same time, that like, if you weren't looking at an HBCU because of like, oh, you wanted the community, their education, the culture, but now you're looking at it because you just want a spot in college, then I look at it kind of different, because it's kind of like you're just looking at it as a second option. But a lot of people that I know, they haven't really like changed their view of it.
Brooks concluded his interview by giving advice for how seniors should think about their college applications.
Be honest about your life experience. Don't try to use even though your blackness and your that's what makes you different. Don't try to use it as like a crutch, something you have to lean on. Like that's your superpower. It's not something you gotta lean on. So just be honest. If that's what your life is about, make sure it's known. Make sure people know that, and just be 100% in your application. And good luck.
Good luck, seniors.